Know how you became an activist?
Well, it's very interesting. I grew up here in Los Angeles, in the South Bay, in Lomita, California. And my parents were liberal Democrats. They hated McCarthy. So I had the McCarthy hearings, and McCarthyism was something that I was introduced to as a child. I think there were two things that really made a big difference in my life. And one of them happened on Pacific Coast Highway when I was 17. I was driving down the Pacific Coast Highway in a 55 Ford during the Watts riots, and I had a bumper sticker say, "We shall overcome," and a white guy tried to drive me off the road. The second thing that happened was at UC Berkeley, which I went to in 1966, and participated in the first anti-war student strike that happened. And then during the Third World Study Strike, which was where people of color, the students of color, which I organized and worked with, they started a picket line demanding ethnic studies, and they brought out the police out of Sproul Hall and took every single person of color off the picket line, thinking that that would kill the strike, and it just built and it built and it built to thousands of students. But there was still, it was very interesting at the end, before they signed the agreement, there were the same people of color and the same small number of us that held out until it happened. The other thing that happened was that the whole thing of this is what democracy looked like, the whole new generation. I experienced the same thing during that strike when Reagan had declared Berkeley a special zone, no demonstrations, and the National Guard came in. But as we were leaving Sproul Plaza, police were clearing Sproul Plaza, they sent a helicopter and they gassed us. And so I said, this is democracy, so what's happening among young people today is the same thing that, that I experienced. I've been an activist the whole time. I was a draft resistor. I was a conscious objector. I did 2 years of alternative service in Vermont, working with emotionally disturbed children. There I came to feminism, working with Vermont women, some of them working on welfare. And so those are the things that brought me to socialism. I joined the Freedom Socialist Party in 1975, and I was a socialist before I joined the organization. And actually, an organization like the Freedom Socialist Party, or even the Peace and Freedom Party, and building it, gives the capacity to be an activist throughout your whole life. And I'm very happy to be here before you as a man who's 64 years old who has lived true to the ideals of my youth. And I think that's what we want to infuse the youth with today, is that they can live true to the ideals of their youth. This has not been an easy, 35, 40 years, yet great things are coming.
Can you give us some idea of your union activities?
Yes, I actually started in Salt Lake City at the Salt Lake Country Club in 1972. That's after I had finished my alternative service. And I worked at the Salt Lake Country Club for $1.50 an hour with no tips. I remember the first and this was 1972, and I remember the first tip I got, I just wanted to almost kiss the man's hand. It was like, wow. Well, then after doing my internship there, I consider an internship, I went to Santa Barbara, and I worked at the Santa Barbara Biltmore Hotel, and that's when I became a member of the Hotel and Restaurant Employees Union. And at the Santa Barbara Hotel, I was a part of a rank and file negotiating committee for a contract, and that's because the union was facing almost its demise, so they turned to the rank and file. And I learned what a labor bureaucracy was about. We had had this great committee, we'd come up with great ideas, we sat down with the lawyers for the other side, and the bureaucrat said to me, after proposing it all, he said, "You're not going to ruin these negotiations, are you?" So this is still there. But I maintained my job. The hotel was bought by the Marriott Corporation, a really big union buster. We lost a campaign to keep the union, but there were 28 of us workers out of about 127. But I saw the power of money there. They came in, with sophisticated lawyers and all. Then I moved to New York City, and I became a rank and file unionist in the Hotel Trades Council, HERE, Hotel Employees and Restaurant Employees. And a year after I arrived, there was a strike. It wasn't a strike really, it was a lockout, because I don't think the bureaucrats would have gone on strike unless they'd locked us out. They were out to bust this union of 16,000, mostly immigrant and women workers. And there again, I learned from and worked with immigrants and women workers, and we actually were on strike for 25 days, and we, as I've said before, some of you may have heard, we took the streets of Manhattan without a police permit.
Wow.
How would you distinguish your, I mean, this conversation with a so-called progressive Democratic Party would cover a lot of the same issues. How would you distinguish your campaign from something that they would be doing?
Well, I first want to say that Rocky's idea of socialism as a centralized state control of people's lives, that's not my idea of socialism. In fact, that book comes from Yugoslavia, where people were actually, it was a critique of the bureaucratization.
Got it.
Bureaucratization, thank you.
There you go.
The bureaucratization of something that is actually positive. I mean, nothing is totally black and white, but socialism is not the centralized control of every aspect of people's lives. No. Socialism can truly exist, as I say in my platform, you have to have workers' committees, councils, and it's councils, workers' committees and councils, and in the economic sphere. Democracy has to come to the economic sphere, and it didn't come to the economic sphere with the degeneration of the Russian Revolution, and also the whole way the idea of socialism in its theoretical possibility and reality has not existed yet, but it's something very much worth fighting for, because capitalism is not working. What is the economic crisis about? You know, Marsha talked about immigrants and talked about how they need the reserve army of labor. They need a reserve army of labor of a global scale. We're in a global market. So that's why this campaign calls for opening the borders. But all the wealth, I think this class, the American working class, which is extremely powerful, and we're not defeated. The worst thing we can do as leftists is act that our class is defeated, because then we just put up a shade, we just shut the door and go home, and then we go on to our rest homes, right? I'm not about ready to do that yet. I think there's so much that we can accomplish in this country, but we're not defeated, and this class has started to move. I think that Wisconsin's an aspect of, well, I think, first of all, I think the immigrant rights movement that started in 2006 is a beginning.
Absolutely.
We, as leftists, I know people in this room know, we have consistently, only the left has celebrated May Day. You know, and it feels like you're just, calling in the wind and carrying on a great tradition. And it wasn't Roosevelt. It wasn't Teddy Roosevelt that got his 8-hour day. It was the Chicago Martyrs and everybody that supported them. And it was also the anarchists that were the radical edge of the American labor movement at that time. And so that is a great gift that we've gotten, that the immigrant workers have given us, and given us as the left. And the left needs to really stand with them. And that's our internationalism, and that's our understanding. And they come from countries where they do celebrate May Day, and consistently. And this is how the ruling class in this country tries to beat us down, and their cynicism and their negativity and their crap of, our lives are reduced to reality television shows. That comes from them. That's made to beat us down, and we have to lift ourselves above it. And also that's why we're running this campaign, is to show some of that optimism and some of that hope and some of that promise, and with concrete things that can be accomplished.
In your online materials, you talk about Occupy a lot and have an identification with it. How do you think Occupy can be mobilized to change electoral politics?
Well, first of all, I want to say Occupy has been very important, because Occupy has also dealt with the problems that we have faced as socialists and progressives and people who have been fighting racism, sexism, homophobia. A whole generation within Occupy has started to look at the questions of how women are treated, feminism, and people of color. Within Occupy, you have people of color, caucuses meeting. And so a whole generation is starting to come to grips with the issues of racism, sexism, homophobia, and anti-immigrant status. So that's very important. Those discussions are taking place not because we are going and implementing the discussions, but because they reflect the reality of the political challenges today. So this campaign actually provides for Occupy a capacity to protest the whole electoral system. It's a write-in campaign. And actually, in my campaigning in New York, if I go to a demonstration and say, I'm running for office, they're not interested. But I say, this is a protest campaign against the electoral system. They say, well, that's interesting, because they're looking for a way to protest the whole damn system, because we need a house cleaning from top to bottom.
That's right.
And it's not, fundamental change is not going to happen in this country unless you deal with the issues of the most oppressed. And in this social structure, with this hierarchy, it's women of color. And I, as a gay man, have worked with women of color, and that is what fuels my activism. And it's when the bottom moves, the whole structure can go forward. So issues of race, sex, class, sexuality, and gender choice are extremely important. And this campaign stands for lifting that strata up and changing the whole system.